Funny thing about luck, it always shows you who someone really is. That was a thought ringing in my head the night my wife, Scarlett, scratched that lottery ticket in our kitchen. I still remember the way her manicured hand trembled, the diamond on her finger catching the kitchen light, as she whispered, 12 million, oh my God. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. At 62, I thought I'd seen everything life would throw at me. 2 wars in business, a lifetime of sweat poured into my sports club down in Orlando, a marriage I believed in for 15 years. But nothing prepared me for the way Scarlett's eyes changed in that moment. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It was hunger. We used to laugh about money. I'd tell her, cash is just gasoline. What matters is where you drive. But that night she didn't see me. She saw an exit. She poured champagne into a crystal glass, her father's gift from years ago, and raised it not to us, but to herself. This changes everything, Carter, she said, lips curling like she'd been waiting for the curtain to fall. I tried to brush it off, clink my beer bottle against her glass. But deep down I knew something had cracked. The Wilsons, her family, never thought much of me. To them, I was a gym guy, a workhorse who didn't belong in their cocktail parties or gated estates. Scarlett played the perfect bridge between our worlds. But that bridge burned the moment she realized $12 million could buy her way back into theirs. That night, while she laughed and called her sister on speakerphone, I stood by the sink, watching bubbles rise in her glass. My own reflection in the kitchen window looked older, grayer than I remembered. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, it all pressed down like an omen. I whispered to myself, barely audible over the clatter of her voice, she's already gone. But I wasn't ready to let go. Not after 15 years. Not after everything I'd built. And then she turned, her phone still pressed to her ear, and said the words that would shatter the life I knew. Carter, we need to talk about divorce. My heart didn't sink. It hardened. Because if Scarlett thought I'd walk away empty-handed, she hadn't been paying attention to the man she married. And that's when the fire inside me lit. She said it so casually, like ordering another glass of wine at dinner. Divorce. 15 years of my life, wrapped in a single word, tossed over her shoulder while she laughed with her sister. I didn't answer right away. At my age, silence is power. You learn more watching how people feel it. Scarlett shifted, cleared her throat, then hung up. You heard me, Carter. The ticket's mine. I'm filing next week. I leaned back against the counter, let the cool granite bite into my palms. You sure about that? She smirked like a high school cheerleader, catching the quarterback's eye. The prenup protects me. You knew that when you sign it back in 2010. What's mine stays mine. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. This woman, my wife, thought I hadn't read every line of that contract, thought I hadn't kept it in the safe, next to my father's old watch, for 15 years. Still, I played along. If that's how you see it, Scarlett. But contracts, they've got a way of saying more than you think. Her jaw tightened. She hated when I talked in riddles. Hated that I never raised my voice. The days that followed were a circus. Scarlett moved $12 million into a separate account, flaunting it like a kid with a new toy. Shopping sprees in Miami. Dinners at the Ritz. A white Bentley she couldn't even parallel park. And the worst part? The man riding shotgun wasn't me. He was young, 30 maybe, hair gelled back, sunglasses indoors. I caught sight of them once at Lake Eola, my morning jog cutting across their little parade. Scarlett in heels, him snapping photos like a tourist. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Just tightened her grip on his arm, her laugh echoing like glass breaking. The Wilson family closed ranks fast. Her father, Arthur, sent me a message to one of his golfing buddies. Don't embarrass yourself, Carter. Walk away with dignity. Dignity. That word stung worse than divorce. Because dignity is what I built my whole life on. Sweat, discipline, respect. And now, they wanted me to crawl out the back door like a man who'd overstayed his welcome. But I wasn't raised that way. My old coach used to say, when someone corners you, you don't look for the exit. You look for the opening. So I called an old friend, one who knew the law better than anyone I'd met, a lawyer who owed me a favor. Bring the contract, he said. We'll see if your lady's as smart as she thinks she is. That night, I sat in my office at the gym, flipping the prenup open. The paper smelled faintly of ink and dust, like it had been waiting for this moment. Clause after clause, line after line, until my eyes landed on the one sentence Scarlett had clearly forgotten. All assets acquired during the marriage shall be considered joint property. I closed the folder, leaned back, and let a slow smile creep across my face. Scarlett had no idea, and the thought of it made the silence in that office sweeter than any victory I'd ever tasted, because the game had just begun. Orlando Country Club, where the Wilsons held court every Sunday afternoon. I never cared much for the place. Too many gold chains, too many fake smiles. But Scarlett insisted I come along, probably thinking I'd squirm when her family circled the wagons. The moment I walked into the dining hall, I felt it, the hush that always follows gossip. Heads turned. Arthur Wilson, tall and stiff in his navy blazer, waved me over with the kind of smile a man saves for funerals. "Carter," he said, clapping my shoulder just a touch too hard. "We need to talk, son." Scarlett stood at his side, glowing in her designer dress, a diamond bracelet catching the Florida sun through the window. Her boy toy wasn't with her, probably too busy polishing her Bentley. But her sister and mother were whispering into napkins like it was high tea. Arthur cleared his throat. "We think it's best you bow out quietly. Scarlett's situation has changed. You've had a good run, but money changes the stakes. Be a gentleman. Sign the papers. Walk away." I let the silence stretch, let their confidence hang like ripe fruit on a branch. Then I leaned in, just enough for the whole table to hear. "Arthur, Scarlett, ladies, I appreciate the advice, but there's one thing you seem to forget. That $12 million, it's not Scarlett's. It's ours. By law, by contract. And no Wilson charm or Bentley leather changes that." The clatter of a fork hitting a plate cut through the room. Scarlett's eyes widened, her lips trembling just for a second before she masked it with a scoff. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. I smiled, calm as a preacher on Sunday. Already dared. "My lawyer's filing the claim this week." Gasps rolled through the tables around us. Some of Arthur's golf buddies leaned back in their chairs, eyes darting between us like they'd stumbled into a prize fight. For the first time, the Wilson name didn't protect her. Scarlett's cheeks flushed crimson, her hands gripping the tablecloth so hard the silverware rattled. It was the kind of moment you can't buy back, the public crack in her perfect porcelain mask. Arthur leaned closer, his voice low but sharp. "You'll regret this." I sat back, folded my hands, and gave him the look I save for men who underestimate me. "No, Arthur, the regret's already started. You just don't hear it yet." Scarlett stood abruptly, her chair scraping the hardwood floor. The whole dining hall turned to watch her storm out, her heels hammering like nails in a coffin. And there I was, left at the Wilsons' table, sipping their $100 wine, letting them choke on the silence she left behind. That was the first time I saw it. Her armor cracking in front of an audience she couldn't control. And I knew it wouldn't be the last. The morning after that country club spectacle, I walked into my gym earlier than usual. The place still smelled like rubber mats and chalk dust, the echoes of yesterday's training sessions hanging in the rafters. My sanctuary, my kingdom. I sat in my office, the prenup open on the desk, the Florida sunlight pouring across the pages. 15 years of marriage, signed and sealed in black ink. And right there in the middle of it all, the sentence Scarlett had chosen to ignore. Joint property. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. When the line clicked, a familiar gravel voice answered. "Carter, didn't expect to hear from you. Time to cash in that favor, Tom." Tom Bradley was more than a lawyer. He was a bulldog in a suit, the kind of man who fought tooth and nail through Orlando courts long before Scarlett ever painted her nails red. We'd met back when I first opened the gym. He helped me fight off a shady landlord trying to raise rent illegally. We'd won then, and I needed him to win now. By noon, Tom was in my office, jacket slung over the chair, glasses perched on his nose as he scanned the contract. He whistled low. She really thought she could keep all 12 million? I nodded. She thinks Wilson money rewrites the law. Tom leaned back, his chair creaking. It doesn't. This clause here. All assets acquired during the marriage are joint. That means her Bentley, her designer closets, even the cash she moved into that offshore account. It's half yours, and the court won't blink twice. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight on my chest lift. But Tom wasn't done. Listen, Carter, this isn't just about money. This is about strategy. She's going to try and paint you as a gym rat who lucked into her life. We need to flip that script. Show the court who she really is. Selfish, reckless, unfaithful if we can prove it. I clenched my fists, the leather armrest groaning under my grip. She's got a new guy. Young, flashy. She parades him around like I don't exist. Tom's grin was razor sharp. Then we dig. We show the judge where those millions went. And when the receipts start piling up, Scarlett won't just lose half. She'll lose her mask. The plan was forming. Evidence, contracts, financial trails. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to expose every rotten piece of Scarlett's betrayal. As Tom packed up his papers, he slapped the prenup shut and looked me square in the eye. You ready for a war, Carter? I stood, shoulders straight, the smell of sweat and iron filling the air as if the gym itself was backing me up. Tom, I've been training for fights my whole life. This one just happens to be in a courtroom. He chuckled. Good, because once we file, Scarlett's going to realize the party's over. And trust me, she won't like the hangover. That night, I locked the gym doors, the metal click of the deadbolt echoing in the dark. For the first time since she'd said divorce, I slept without waking in a sweat. But deep in my gut, I knew this was only the warm-up. The real fight was just stepping into the ring. And Scarlett? She had no idea what was coming. Tom didn't waste time. Within days, he had a small army of paralegals combing through bank records, credit statements, even receipts left crumpled in Scarlett's Bentley glove box. Every dollar tells a story, and Scarlett was writing hers in neon. 5-star hotels in Miami Beach, luxury boutiques in New York, wire transfers to some no-name shell company in the Caymans, and always, always, the same second signature. Not hers, his, the young one. Tom dropped a manila folder on my desk one morning, the kind that smelled faintly of toner and trouble. Meet Jordan Hayes, he said, sliding a photo across the table. There he was, the sunglasses, the smug grin, the kind of jawline that only lasts until 35. A boy playing at being a man, funded by my wife's betrayal. He's been on her payroll since the day she cashed that ticket, Tom explained. Clothes, watches, trips. Hell, she even wired him a down payment for a condo in Miami, all using funds she claims are separate. I felt the blood rise in my ears, but I didn't slam my fist, didn't shout. At 62, rage doesn't roar, it sharpens. Tom kept talking. This is gold for us. We'll prove marital funds were misused. Judges hate that. It screams recklessness, bad faith. She'll lose more than money. She'll lose credibility. That word, credibility, rang in my chest like a bell. Scarlett's entire life was built on image. The pristine Wilson daughter, polished, untouchable. If the world saw what she really was, that would cut deeper than any check. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table of my empty house, Scarlett's perfume still lingering in the curtains. I pour myself a bourbon, let the ice crack like breaking glass. And I pictured her, draped over Jordan's arm, tossing my years aside for a man who hadn't earned a damn thing in his life. I thought of my father's watch and safe, the weight of it, the reminder of a man who taught me that discipline is the only currency that holds value. Scarlett had traded that for quick thrills and cheap champagne. By dawn, I made my choice. We weren't just going to take her money back. We were going to drag every skeleton out of her walk-in closet and lay them bare in front of the people she craved most. Her family, her friends, her society. Tom called later that day. Our motion's ready. We'll file in the morning. Once we serve her, it's official. She'll know you're coming. I walked out to the gym floor, the clang of weights and the grunt of athletes filling the air. My people. My legacy. I thought of how Scarlett once rolled her eyes at this place, said it smelled like sweat and desperation. But to me, it smelled like survival. I grabbed the whistle from my desk, blew it hard across the empty hall, the sound piercing the rafters like a battle cry. Scarlett wanted a war. And tomorrow, she'd find out I'd already chosen the battlefield. The papers were served on a Tuesday morning, crisp and final like a referee's whistle. Tom made sure of it, delivered straight to her condo door in Baldwin Park. Not by mail, not slipped under the mat. Handed directly to Scarlett while she sipped her latte, neighbors looking on. By noon, my phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Her sister, her mother, even Arthur himself. I didn't answer. Let them stew. But then came the call I'd been waiting for. Scarlett. Her voice, usually honey smooth, was jagged now. How dare you? You think you can humiliate me? You think you can drag me into court like some gold-digging tramp? I kept my tone steady. Scarlett, I didn't do this. You did. You bought yourself a Bentley with money. That belongs to both of us. You paid for that boy's lifestyle with years I spent building mine. The judge will see it. She laughed, but it cracked halfway through. I'll bury you, Carter. My family will bury you. Funny, I said, leaning back in my chair at the gym. Last I checked, the law didn't have the Wilson crest carved on it. Click. Dead air. By the end of the week, her rage turned public. Instagram posts of her sipping champagne with Jordan, captions about new beginnings and living free. She was performing, tried to convince the world she was untouchable. But the cracks showed. Comments piled up. Didn't she just get served? Isn't she still married? What about the prenup? Tom called me into his office. Stacks of files spread across his oak desk. She's spiraling. Every move she makes online, every dollar she spends, will use it. Judges don't like arrogance. They like discipline. You're the picture of discipline. I thought back to the country club, to the look in her eyes when I dropped the prenup bomb. That wasn't arrogance. It was fear. And fear grows in silence. Still, she struck back, filed a counter-motion claiming emotional abuse, trying to paint me as controlling, the cold husband who never gave her the life she deserved. Her lawyer must have thought they struck gold with that narrative. Tom slid the motion across the table. Typical play. Don't bite. We'll dismantle it in court. I read the words, Scarlett's accusations typed in sterile legal font. Lies, each one of them. But I didn't flare. I smiled, because the more she exaggerated, the weaker she became. Friday night. I jogged down Orange Avenue, the neon lights buzzing overhead. I passed the Ritz where she once paraded Jordan, their laughter loud enough to spill into the street. I paused, looked up at the glittering lobby. Behind those windows, she was probably telling him how she crushed me, how I didn't stand a chance. But she didn't know what Tom knew. She didn't know what I knew. The contract, the receipts, the trail of her own arrogance. And as I jogged back into the humid floor tonight, I whispered to myself, the walls are closing, Scarlett, one brick at a time. The trial date was set, and the moment she stepped into that courtroom, the game would change forever. Downtown Orlando, Friday night. Scarlett chose the kind of place she thought screamed victory. A rooftop bar, glass walls, neon cocktails with names nobody could pronounce. She arrived in her white Bentley, Jordan sliding out first like her chauffeur. Cameras flashed, her doing, no doubt. She loved the performance. I hadn't planned to be there, but fate has a funny way of setting the stage. Tom and I had dinner a block away, going over trial prep, when one of his associates leaned in and said, "You'll want to see this." So we walked, up the elevator, through the double doors, into Scarlett's theater. She spotted me instantly. Her eyes narrowed, then widened with the thrill of the challenge. She clutched Jordan's arm tighter, and raised her voice just enough for the crowd to hear. "Well, look who it is. My soon-to-be ex, tell me, Carter, how does it feel watching me live the life you never could?" Laughter rippled around her. Jordan smirked, tugging his designer jacket, like he owned the place. I didn't blink. I nodded to Tom, who handed me a folder, the kind thick with truth. I set it gently on the nearest cocktail table, right where the bar's music dipped low. "Funny you mention life, Scarlett," I said, my voice carrying in the sudden hush. "Because the life you're flaunting, it's bought with joint funds. Every trip, every bottle, every condo payment in Miami, paid out of the account you thought nobody was watching." Her smile faltered. Jordan shifted, confused. I slid a photo out of the folder, her signature right beside Jordan's on a wire transfer. 12 million doesn't stretch far when you're feeding two mouths, does it? Gasps scattered across the room. Phones tilted upward, recording. Scarlett's face flushed, her lips parted, but no words came. Jordan tried to speak, but the crowd drowned him out with whispers. "Isn't that illegal? Joint funds?" "She's in trouble." Scarlett's mask cracked. She grabbed Jordan's arm and hissed, "Let's go." But the damage was done. The audience she craved most, the wealthy, the beautiful, the ones she needed to believe her story, had just seen her stripped bare. I turned back to Tom, who wore a grin sharp enough to cut glass. "That'll play well in court," he murmured. I didn't need to gloat. I just let the silence hang, let Scarlett's heels hammer across the rooftop floor as she stormed toward the exit. For the second time, she tried to put me on stage. And for the second time, she ended up the spectacle. As the door shut behind her, I raised my glass of club soda, the ice clinking like applause. The war wasn't over. Not even close. But now, the audience knew whose side the truth was on. And Scarlett? She just learned the one lesson she never believed applied to her. In America, image doesn't save you when the receipts start talking. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and nerves. I'd been in plenty of arenas, boxing rings, business meetings, even funeral homes, but nothing hummed with quiet electricity like that courtroom on the first day of trial. Scarlett walked in draped in a crimson dress, the kind meant to remind the world she was a Wilson. Jordan trailed behind her in a suit too shiny for the occasion, his eyes darting around like a kid caught sneaking into an R-rated movie. Cameras waited at the steps outside, and she'd given them her best wronged woman pose. Inside, though, there were no filters. Just law. I sat with Tom at my side, the prenup spread on the table like a sword. He tapped it with his pen, steady as a metronome. "Remember, Carter, judges love consistency. You stay calm, you win half the battle." Across the aisle, Scarlett's lawyer, slick hair, $1,000 tie, stood to make his opening statement. He painted me as a bitter old man, clinging to a marriage long gone. He called Scarlett a woman of independence, a daughter of one of Orlando's most respected families, and the rightful sole owner of her winnings. Scarlett dabbed her eyes at just the right moment. A performance, but a good one. She'd rehearsed. Then Tom rose. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. "This case isn't about bitterness or broken vows. It's about the law. And the law in Florida is clear. Assets acquired during a marriage are joint property. My client isn't asking for charity. He's asking for what is rightfully his." He flipped open a folder, held up a receipt. "This is a transfer made by Mrs. Wilson Hayes." He paused deliberately, letting the hyphen sting. "To purchase a luxury vehicle, paid from a shared marital account. We will show countless more examples. This is not independence. This is misappropriation." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Scarlett shifted in her chair, her painted nails tapping against the table. When the judge called for a recess, I caught Scarlett's eyes across the aisle. She glared, but underneath the fire was something new. Doubt. Outside, reporters swarmed. Scarlett launched into her practice lines. "This is harassment. This is a man trying to steal from me." She played the victim well, until Tom stepped to the microphones. "My client isn't stealing. He's protecting his rights under Florida law. And the evidence will show that Mrs. Wilson misused marital funds for the benefit of her new partner." Reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked. Scarlett's face tightened, her lips pressed in. She hadn't expected Tom to beat her at her own game, public perception. As we left, Tom leaned close. "She's still dangerous. But today she bled." I nodded, the Florida sun hot on my neck, as we pushed past the cameras. This wasn't the knockout punch. Not yet, but the first round was over. And for once, Scarlett didn't look untouchable. The second day in court felt different. The air was heavier. The rows behind us filled with curious locals, reporters, even a few of Scarlett's high society friends who'd slipped in to watch the drama unfold. The Wilsons always thought their name could close doors. Here, it just pulled more people in to see if the mighty would fall. Tom stood like a man about to conduct an orchestra. "Your Honor, today we present evidence of financial mismanagement," he said, voice crisp as glass. He held up a stack of statements, page after page of Scarlett's signature dancing alongside Jordan's. The first receipt flashed on the projector, a wire transfer to a luxury condo in Miami. Then another, private jet services. Then another, diamond cufflinks charge at Cartier, billed straight to the marital account. Gasps rippled through the room. Even the judge leaned forward. Scarlett tried to maintain her mask, lips curled in disdain, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her chair. Jordan, sitting just behind her, shrank with every number displayed, sweat pooling at his collar. Tom pressed on. "This is not independence. This is indulgence at my client's expense. $12 million may seem endless, but not when it's siphoned into luxury trinkets and weekend getaways. The law doesn't protect recklessness. It punishes it." Scarlett's lawyer jumped up, objecting, claiming the funds were separate property. But Tom was ready. He pointed at the prenup, enlarged on the screen. The clause highlighted like scripture, "All assets acquired during the marriage shall be considered joint property." The judge nodded. Objection overruled. Proceed. It was like watching a wall crumble, brick by brick. Reporters scribbled furiously. I caught whispers from the back row, some of Scarlett's so-called friends. She bought him a condo? With Carter's money? The same women who toasted her at the rooftop bar now hid smirks behind manicured hands. Scarlett's cheeks burned crimson. She shifted in her chair, whispering harshly to her lawyer, but the microphones picked up fragments. "Fix this, shut it down, make it stop." Tom leaned close to me. "We're not just showing numbers, Carter, we're showing character. The more the jury of public opinion sees her feeding this boy's ego with millions, the less sympathy she'll get." By the end of the session, Jordan avoided eye contact with everyone. His swagger was gone. When the judge called recess, Scarlett turned to him, snapping, "Say something. Defend me." He mumbled, shook his head, and walked out, leaving her alone in the courtroom spotlight. The cameras were waiting, hungry. They caught everything, her desperation, his retreat, the perfect image of a woman losing control of her own narrative. I didn't smile. Not yet, but inside I felt the tide turning. Because it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about exposing the truth, Scarlett's truth. And tomorrow, Tom promised, we'd bring the hammer down even harder. The kind of evidence that doesn't just shake a case. It shatters reputations. By the third week of hearings, the shine had worn off Scarlett's performance. The crimson dresses turned darker, her hair less polished, the makeup heavier, almost desperate. She no longer strolled into the courthouse with her chin high. She hurried, eyes darting at the cameras, Jordan trailing behind like a ghost who knew his time was running out. Inside, Tom tore through her defense like a man peeling wallpaper from a rotten wall. "Mrs. Wilson," he said during cross-examination, "is it true you purchased a vehicle valued at over $240,000 less than 2 weeks after receiving your winnings?" Her lawyer objected. The judge allowed it. Scarlett squirmed. "It was a gift," she snapped. Tom adjusted his glasses. "A gift for yourself, paid from a joint marital account." "Correct." The courtroom buzzed. Scarlett flushed. "I don't recall. Would you like me to refresh your memory?" Tom flipped the receipt onto the projector, her signature in black and white. The audience erupted in murmurs. Scarlett tried to regain footing. She spoke of love, of betrayal, of a husband too busy with his gym to give her the life she deserved. But the more she talked, the thinner her voice became, the more the gallery whispered. The Wilson family sat stone-faced in the second row, their names suddenly more burdened than shield. Arthur avoided my gaze. He knew what was happening. His daughter wasn't the victim. She was a spectacle. After court, the press swarmed as always. Scarlett tried her best to smile, but questions cut sharper now. Mrs. Wilson, how much did you spend on your new partner? Are you worried about losing half the winnings? Did your prenup really include joint property? Her answers stumbled, clipped, bitter. Clips went viral. Scarlett, once radiant, now defensive and shrill, wagging a finger at the cameras. The comments online were brutal. She's cooked. This is embarrassing. Team Carter all the way. I watched one of those videos late at night, sitting alone in my living room. The same house she had decorated, filled with her taste, her perfume. But it wasn't her house anymore. It was mine. And the sound of her unraveling was the sweetest music I'd heard in years. Still, Tom reminded me to stay sharp. Don't celebrate yet. Judges don't care about memes. They care about proof. Next week, we hit her with the deepest cut. Evidence of intent. Proof she tried to hide funds. That'll be the nail. I nodded, though my mind drifted to Scarlett herself. She had built her whole world on control, on appearances. And now, in front of everyone who mattered to her, she was slipping. The once pristine daughter of the Wilsons, now sweating under cross-examination, fumbling before cameras, abandoned by her boy toy who sat further and further back in the gallery each day. Her empire wasn't just cracking. It was collapsing. And I couldn't help but think, the higher you climb on borrowed ladders, the harder you fall when someone kicks them out from under you. The next hearing would be brutal. And for Scarlett, it might just be the moment she wished she never bought that ticket. The morning of the 11th session, the courthouse felt different. Reporters crowded tighter, microphones thrust higher, like they sensed blood in the water. Even the bailiff whispered to Tom as we walked in, "Heard you got something big today." Tom didn't reply. He just gave me a quick nod, that bulldog grin curling at the edges. Scarlett arrived late, hair pulled back, so tight it looked painful. Jordan wasn't with her. Word had already spread he'd slipped out of Orlando, probably back to Miami, leaving her to face the music alone. She walked fast, eyes down, heels clacking like a metronome of panic. Inside, the judge called order. Tom stood, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, today we introduce evidence not only of reckless spending, but of concealment. Evidence that Mrs. Wilson attempted to hide marital funds." The gallery hushed. Even Arthur Wilson, normally unflappable, shifted in his seat. Tom handed a flash drive to the clerk, and the screen lit up with bank statements. Large transfers routed through shell accounts in the Bahamas. Scarlett's name, her signature. "Here," Tom said, tapping the screen with his pen. Mrs. Wilson wired $750,000 into an account under her maiden name. Same day she filed for divorce. The intention is clear. Concealment of marital property. Scarlett bolted upright. "That's a lie," she snapped, her voice cracking. I didn't. Tom didn't flinch. "We have notarized documentation. We also have testimony from the bank officer who handled the transaction. He will confirm Mrs. Wilson personally authorized it." The judge raised a brow. "Mrs. Wilson, do you have an explanation for this?" Scarlett's lawyer stammered, fumbling with papers, but the silence stretched like a noose. Scarlett's lips trembled. "It was a misunderstanding. I was securing funds for personal use." "Personal use?" Tom's voice sharpened. "Marital funds laundered through shell accounts? Your Honor, this isn't independence. This is deception. This is intent to defraud her husband of his rightful share." Gasps erupted in the gallery. Phones buzzed. Fingers flew across screens. Outside, hashtags were already being born. Scarlett's face crumbled. Her family looked on in horror. Even her sister, who once laughed loudest at her jokes, buried her face in her hands. The judge's gavel struck once, the sharp crack echoing. "We'll recess until tomorrow. Counsel, prepare closing arguments." Scarlett slumped back in her chair, her crimson nails digging into the wood. For the first time, she didn't look like the Wilson daughter, the society wife, the lottery queen. She looked like what she was, a woman caught red-handed, stripped of her mask. As we walked out, reporters swarmed. Questions flew. "Carter, do you think she'll face fraud charges? How much do you expect to win? Do you believe Scarlett has lost the public sympathy? Tom leaned into the microphones. We don't deal in sympathy. We deal in truth. And the truth is written in every transfer, every signature. That's what the court will see. Scarlett tried to shove past the cameras, but flashes caught her pale face, her trembling hands. The public had its verdict long before the judge would give his. I paused at the courthouse steps, the Florida sun blazing overhead. For years, Scarlett had basked in the glow of admiration. Now, that same light exposed every crack in her armor. And tomorrow? Tomorrow would bring the final blow. The third humiliation. The one she'd never recover from. The final day felt less like a hearing and more like a spectacle. Reporters packed the benches. Locals lined the walls, eager to watch a Wilson fall. Even the bailiffs looked restless, whispering bets on how long the judge would take to drop the hammer. Scarlett walked in, pale beneath her heavy makeup, clutching a folder like it might save her. Her once perfect posture was gone. She slouched, her eyes hollow. Arthur trailed behind her, his hand on her shoulder, but his face was stone, more concerned about the Wilson name than his daughter's future. When the judge entered, silence hit like a slap. Tom stood, his presence calm, deliberate. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The prenup signed in 2010 states unequivocally that all assets acquired during this marriage are joint property. Mrs. Wilson attempted to conceal funds, misuse marital accounts, and funnel money into luxuries for a third party. This is not speculation. It is documented fact. Scarlett's lawyer tried one last time, his voice shrill. Your Honor, my client was under emotional distress. These transfers were not deception but desperation. The judge raised a hand, silencing him. Then he turned his gaze to Scarlett. Mrs. Wilson, the law does not bend for desperation. It is written in black and white. This court finds in favor of Mr. Carter Wilson. Half the winnings, $4.01 million, shall be awarded to him immediately. Furthermore, this court condemns your attempts at concealment as reckless and unbecoming. The gavel struck. Sharp, final. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the room erupted. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Pens scratched furiously across notepads. Whispers swelled into waves. Scarlett froze. Her hands shook as the folder slipped from her lap. Paper scattering like fallen leaves across the courtroom floor. Jordan wasn't there to help her pick them up. Her sister didn't move. Even Arthur stayed seated, his eyes closed, his jaw clenched tight. And the gallery, those friends, those socialites, those who once envied her, watched as she bent down on trembling knees to gather her papers. The mighty Wilson daughter, crouched on the floor, fumbling for scraps. That was the third humiliation. The one no headline could soften. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched, silent, as the weight of truth crushed the last of her mask. Tom leaned in, whispering, It's over, Carter. You've won. But I knew better. Winning money wasn't the real victory. Watching her crumble before the very people she lived to impress. That was the justice I'd been waiting for. When I stepped out into the Florida sun, the air tasted sweeter. The courthouse doors slammed shut behind me, muffling the chaos inside. Reporters swarmed, but I walked straight through them, head high, shoulders steady, because this wasn't just the end of a trial. It was the end of Scarlett's empire, and the beginning of mine. The verdict echoed long after the gavel fell. Scarlett left the courthouse under a storm of cameras, her crimson dress clashing with the gray, tear-streaked face she couldn't hide. By the time she reached her Bentley, the crowd was chanting, some mocking, some jeering. She slammed the door, but the lenses caught everything, and the fall didn't stop at the courthouse steps. Within a week, the papers carried headlines. Wilson Air is forced to sell Bentley. Another week, Scarlett returns designer wardrobe amid debt crisis. Photos surface of her walking out of boutiques with garbage bags, not shopping bags, returning luxury for cash. The woman who once paraded through Orlando's high society now avoided grocery stores, sending assistants to fetch her food. Jordan? Gone. His condo in Miami sold overnight. Last anyone heard, he was photographed in Vegas with another woman, a bottle of champagne in each hand. Scarlett's new life had evaporated faster than her winnings. The Wilson family's empire trembled, too. Arthur kept his daughter on a leash, pulling her back into his office, not as an executive, not even as a partner, just as an assistant, filing papers, answering phones. The woman who once tossed $12 million fortunes like confetti now fetched her father's coffee. Public humiliation turned private. Rumors whispered through Orlando's gated communities. At charity galas, her absence was noted and savored. Once, she was a dime in the room. Now, she was a cautionary tale. I'd be lying if I said I didn't watch. I saw her standing outside the Wilson building one afternoon, waiting for a car that wasn't hers anymore. No Bentley, no chauffeur. Just Scarlett, clutching her purse like a lifeline, staring at the pavement as if it might swallow her whole. And yet, I didn't feel pity. Not anymore, because pity belongs to the innocent. Scarlett had chosen every step of this road, the lies, the lover, the arrogance. And now she walked it barefoot, the stones cutting deeper with each stride. Meanwhile, I invested every cent of my settlement back into the club. New equipment, new programs for kids, veterans, seniors. Where she squandered millions on champagne and hollow applause, I built something that would last longer than both of us. The papers noticed. One headline read, "Local gym owner expands after court victory." They didn't call me Scarlett's husband anymore. They called me by name, Carter, and that mattered more than money. But I knew the story wasn't finished. Not yet, because somewhere inside her, behind the ruined makeup and the whispering laughter of her so-called friends, Scarlett still believed she could claw her way back. And I was ready to show her, one final time, that some losses can't be undone. The kind of loss that doesn't just empty a bank account. The kind that empties a soul. When the dust settled, I didn't buy a new car or a bigger house. I bought treadmills, boxing gloves, mats for yoga classes. I built something that mattered. The settlement, $4.01 million, wasn't just money. It was fuel, and I poured every drop into the gym that had carried me through storms long before Scarlett's betrayal. We expanded the main floor, doubled the weight racks, added a pool. But the real pride came from the programs. Free memberships for veterans, after-school training for kids who couldn't afford uniforms, classes for seniors who just wanted to keep moving. Word spread. Parents brought their kids not just to train, but to learn discipline. Veterans found community in the clang of iron and the rhythm of sparring drills. Seniors laughed in the pool, calling me Coach Carter instead of that gym guy. The club stopped being a business. It became a heartbeat. Every morning, I'd unlock the doors, the smell of rubber mats and fresh paint filling the air. And I'd think about how Scarlett once sneered, calling it a sweat box for desperate people. She was wrong. It was a sanctuary, a place where desperation turned into strength. One afternoon, a local reporter came by, camera crew in tow. They wanted a feature on the gym's new outreach program. I stood in front of the kids' boxing ring, gloves hanging behind me, and told them the truth. Life's not about the money you win. It's about the battles you fight. And sometimes the fight you think is going to break you ends up being the one that makes you. The segment aired that night. My phone lit up with messages from old friends, even strangers. The comments online didn't mock me, didn't pity me. They called me resilient. They called me a leader. For the first time in years, my name wasn't tied to Scarlett's. It stood on its own, but the past wasn't finished with me. A week later, as I locked up after a long day, I noticed someone standing across the street. Scarlett. She wore plain slacks, her hair tied back, holding a paper bag from a discount store. No makeup, no cameras, no Jordan. Just her. She didn't cross over, didn't speak. She just stared at the glowing sign above the gym doors, the name I'd fought for, the place she once dismissed. Her face tightened, and then she turned away, disappearing into the shadows. I didn't chase her. Didn't need to, because in that silent moment, I saw the contrast clearer than ever. She had everything and lost it all. I had been stripped bare and built myself back stronger. And the story wasn't over. There was still one final chapter left, one last reckoning. Not in a courtroom, not in a bar, but in the place that defined us both, where she'd be forced to see exactly what her greed had cost her, and where I'd finally close the book. It was a Tuesday morning when I found myself downtown, walking past the Wilson building. I hadn't stepped foot near that glass tower since before the trial. Back then, Scarlett loved to remind me it was real business, not a glorified gym like mine. The lobby gleamed as always, marble floors polished to a shine, gold letters etched into the wall. Wilson and Associates. I almost kept walking, but then I saw her. Scarlett. She sat behind the reception desk. Not the corner office. Not the conference table where she once boasted about taking over the family empire. No, she was a receptionist now. Her posture was stiff, her blazer cheap, the kind you buy off a rack when you've already sold the designer suits to pay debts. A phone rang in front of her. She answered in a voice I barely recognized. Flat. Mechanical. Wilson and Associates. How may I direct your call? For a second, I almost didn't believe it. The same woman who once toasted herself with champagne on rooftops, who thought 12 million made her invincible, reduced to taking messages for her father's junior associates. She looked up and froze. Our eyes met across the lobby. Time slowed. Her lips parted, like she wanted to speak, but no words came. And in that silence, everything we been came rushing back. The kitchen where she scratched that ticket. The rooftop bar where she tried to humiliate me. The courtroom floor where her papers scattered like ashes. All of it. I didn't smirk. Didn't gloat. I just stood there, letting the weight of the moment hang between us. Finally, she broke eye contact, fumbling with a stack of forms. Her cheeks burned crimson as a junior partner walked past without so much as a nod. The Wilson heir, invisible in her own house. I walked out slowly, the Florida sun hitting me as the glass doors shut behind. On the sidewalk, I thought of my gym, the laughter of kids in the boxing ring, the clap of weights, the sense of purpose filling every corner. My life had grown bigger, while hers had shrunk to a desk phone and a stack of posts. And that's when I realized this wasn't just revenge, it was balance. She had taken the path of greed and lost herself. I had taken the path of discipline and found peace. Still, a part of me knew the story wasn't finished. Not until I faced her one last time. Not as her husband, not as a rival, but as the man who refused to break. The man who would leave her with an image she could never erase. One final act. One final symbol. And then it would be done. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But to me, it never felt cold. It felt steady, like the rhythm of a heavy bag swinging in the gym. Each strike timed, deliberate, inevitable. Weeks after I saw Scarlett at that reception desk, the city hosted a charity gala. Irony had a sense of humor. It was held at the very rooftop bar where she once tried to humiliate me in front of her new crowd. Back then, she paraded Jordan and laughed in my face. Tonight, the tables had turned. I was invited as an honoree. The gym's youth program had grown fast, and local papers called it a beacon for Orlando families. They wanted me to give a short speech about resilience. The room sparkled with chandeliers and tuxedos, but I didn't feel out of place. I stood tall in a simple suit, my father's old watch on my wrist, the same one I kept beside that prenup for 15 years. A symbol of patience, of time. When I stepped to the microphone, I scanned the crowd, and there she was, Scarlett, not in crimson, not in diamonds, just a modest black dress, sitting quietly in the back, as if she'd slipped in hoping no one would notice. But I noticed. I began. Life has a way of testing us. Sometimes it takes everything, money, trust, even love. But what defines us isn't what we lose. It's what we build after. The room hushed. Glasses stilled. I continued, my voice steady. I stand here tonight not because I won a court case, but because I refuse to break. Because I learned that discipline, honesty, and resilience will outlast greed every time. And if you don't believe me, look at this club, look at these kids, look at this community. That's the real jackpot. Applause swelled. Cameras flashed. And in that moment, I raised the gym keys in my hand, the same set Scarlett once mocked, calling them the smell of sweat. I held them high, the metal glinting under the lights. "These keys," I said, "mean more than $12 million ever could. They unlock doors not for me, but for everyone who walks through them. And that's something no betrayal can take away." The room erupted. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Scarlett lower her gaze, her shoulders collapsing as if the words themselves were weight she could no longer carry. No tantrum, no performance, just quiet defeat. That was the final image burned into her life. Me, standing on the same rooftop where she once mocked me, not broken, not bitter, victorious in the only way that mattered. As I stepped down from the stage, the applause still ringing, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. The war was over. Justice had been served, not with rage, but with truth. And Scarlett? She would live the rest of her life remembering that moment. The echo of those keys, the sound of a community cheering for the man she thought she could destroy. Revenge wasn't fire. It was light, and it left her in the shadows. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.